Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the What Fulfills You podcast. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host, and today's episode is focused on reducing stress and coming back to your center. I would also add that this could be relatable if you just in general sometimes feel overwhelmed and you don't really have a system in place or habits in place that help you get back to center. I'm going to share the things that I've continuously done over the years. I would say basically since graduating college, that has helped me maintain this balance, so to speak. And I want to add that I don't believe in work-life balance. That's just my personal philosophy. I love what I do. I hope that I get to continue to expand on what I do and continue to integrate it into my life and not have it so separated. And that is also why sometimes I work on weekends and sometimes certain weekdays I don't work, maybe because I'm doing like a day trip or something. And that's just the privilege I have as an entrepreneur, right? But because I am very aware of that privilege, it's why I don't try to do this whole, I separate work from my life. Like I really just integrate it. And I also check in with myself, if I'm ever feeling burnt out, am I doing the things that I'm going to mention to you, or am I not, right? And I think one of the reasons why I don't often feel crazy burnout is because I do luckily have the time, opportunity, and mindfulness to come back to center and do the things that I need to do to take care of myself in order to perform my best in other areas of my life. And so, doesn't matter whether you work for yourself in any capacity or you have or you work for someone or you have a normal 9 to 5 job or maybe just a very overwhelming job. In fact, one of my good friends that is newer into my life, she works in banking and finance and all of that. And she tells me about how lack of balance she has and how little time she has for herself. And oftentimes those conversations make me feel really bad. They make me feel really bad in a positive way, in the sense that I remind myself what privilege it is to do the thing that I'm doing, do the things that I'm doing and have the space and time and freedom of time to like schedule things accordingly. And ideas I'm going to share are very applicable for anyone. You can incorporate it on your weekends, you can incorporate it after work, before work, it doesn't matter. But if you are ever feeling stressed or overwhelmed in any shape or form, here are some of the things that I have done when I have felt that way, which, by the way, I also still feel that myself. It's a very normal thing. But these are the things that I make sure I'm continuously doing to keep myself in check and keep myself feeling centered. So, the first one, believe it or not, it involves simply making plans with a friend, whether that's getting coffee, dinner, lunch, drinks, going for a long walk together. It is simply that social connection. Now, for context, I work by myself. I'm an entrepreneur, and even my tiny little team, I love them so much. They're all remote. And so while I do weekly calls with them and connection sessions with them, there is nothing better than connecting with people and especially friends in person. And so there's two parts of this that I really notice help me alleviate some stress or alleviate some overwhelm. Number one, making plans where you have something to look forward to is just good. It's good for your health, right? Like, I'm not saying to create plans where you get excited and live for the weekend. That's a different problem to solve. But in general, having something to look forward to in your life, especially when everything else isn't going so well, is going to be a big positive helper for you. And the second part to that is, of course, connecting. and staying connected with your friends and the people that add to your life and bring you joy. I have so many amazing friends here in New York, but also outside of New York that if I'm going on a walk by myself or something, right? Maybe I'm just even giving them a phone call and talking to them for 30 minutes or an hour. That helps me come back to my center. And so think about that. Are you making time for something as small as that? Making time for dinner plans after work, even if you're ending work late, could you do that on a Thursday or Friday? Making dinner plans at, 8:30 p.m., which to be honest, in New York, that's really normal. Like going to dinner at 8:30 or 9 is not weird at all, especially when it goes towards the weekend. Or being proactive and making brunch plans for the weekend or grabbing coffee or sometimes you have to squeeze more than one in a day, right? Like, see if you have the capacity for that. But I think two parts to that has always helped me is, again, making plans where I have something to look forward to. And number two, just creating connection and creating points of connection in my life. And for me personally, I just like to do it over dinner and drinks or lunch or coffee. Like that's part of the lifestyle here in New York. So that's why I'm specifying it like that. But please, it doesn't have to be coffee or dinner. Like it can be a walk. It can be, going to a fitness class together. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you want it to be a space where you can chat and connect, like even like a picnic outside, right? Like especially when it's, warmer weather. I mean, right now it's fall season, so yes, you can still do that, but just something to keep in mind. It doesn't have to be very costly. It just has to be intentional, and you'll definitely feel the effect of that the way I have. A second tip that I would recommend, and something that I have done, not as frequently as I would like to, but it's something that I always notice that I come back to whenever I am feeling down or just having a moment, right? Because it's human. I think of volunteering and doing anything to get outside of myself. So outside of my own mind, my own world, my own thinking. And I think this is a great one. Like anything that you can do to get outside of yourself and outside of your world is always going to, number one, remind you of how minute and, so to speak, small that the things that you're worried about or you're stressed about are. I think that's the beauty of volunteering, is that you just see different facets of life that you're not seeing on a daily basis, and it's a good wake-up reminder. But number two, when you do something that's beyond yourself, it's very human of us to feel good and to feel impactful in a different way, right? Outside of your job, outside of the things that you get paid to do, it's really fulfilling. And I think most importantly, it takes you out and away from the things that are making you feel overwhelmed. I think that's the focal point here. So there's so many different opportunities and ways to volunteer. I know one of my good friends, recently she volunteered at a public park here in New York City. And I think she like raked some leaves, and it was like a 2 or 3 hour, physical volunteering thing. But there's just so many different options, and all it really takes is a Google search. So the ball is in your court, but I highly recommend this one. Again, it just helps you get outside of the thing or the things that you feel overwhelmed or stressed about. And I'll add this too, I currently teach skating part-time, and it's something that I came back to 3 years ago during a time in my life where I felt really called to find and do something to get outside of myself. I was just going through different emotional, mental grief, if you will, really. And I look back and I just remember I knew that the thing that I wanted to do at that stage was to take action and find something to get outside of myself. And in doing so, in coming back to teach figure skating after like a 4 or 5 year hiatus, what was it? No, it wasn't that long. I guess it was like a 3 year hiatus, really, like from the time I like, took a break from teaching because I went into full-time life and stuff. Um, I, besides getting to connect with kids, which was something I didn't know was so joyful for me and very fruitful, I also made two friendships that have been significant in my own life, especially here in New York City. And so those were things that I didn't know that I would get out of doing something like getting outside of myself and going to teach skating. Now, obviously, that's not volunteering, but to be transparent, it's not necessarily the best use of my time to be teaching skating part-time. Like any, stellar entrepreneur would probably say you should be just doubling down on what you really want to do and put more time into that. And there's definitely some truth to that, but for the meantime, I've chosen to allocate, 2 to 3 hours a week to teaching skating, which isn't a lot of time, but just the commute and all of it, it's like a really savvy entrepreneur who is more business focused would say you could use that time to double down on the thing that you want to build. And yeah, that is true. But I love the way it creates a sense of balance in my life by giving back, even though, yes, it's a paid opportunity. I am giving back my time and my love for the sport. And also, something I never thought of when I started coming back was the way I speak to my students and the young children, especially that I work with, is really impactful for them and to them and for years to come. And so it's something I take a lot of pride in, and I take it very seriously. I know it's very impactful, the way I speak, the way I teach them, and I hope I can bring that positive impact in especially the children and the students I get to teach. So that's something that I really recommend. Anything to get outside of yourself beyond what you already do. My third tip, and definitely one of my go-tos on a weekly basis, is just taking a long walk. So when I think back to times where when I lived in Irvine and Orange County, California, when I lived in Los Angeles, when, living here in New York City, I have always, which I never even thought of until now, to be honest, I've always had a walking path. And I've also always had a walking path that would be up to an hour or an hour and a half, depending on, what I want. And I can also shorten it too, right? But I always had a walking path for at least an hour. And I think back to all of those walking paths. I mean, in California, I drove to them, and that kind of is crazy to me now that I think of it because I really was committed. But long walks are just so great. I mean, I don't even need to repeat all the benefits of a long walk. Most of you guys probably know it. And if you don't, just research why going outside, going for a long walk is helpful for so many different aspects of your health. But also, something to keep in mind is that you might think it's unproductive and that you have so much to do. And I was once in that position. I thought I had no time, that I needed to get my shit done and my work was more important or my deadlines were more important. And sometimes they really are, okay? But there are also other times, which I only realized after the fact, that I tried to stay at my computer or I tried to stay focused on the work that I was trying to get done or something that was deadline related. And the more I tried to do something that I just wasn't, you know, physically or psychologically just in the headspace to do, the longer it took. So ironically, it was when I would go outside and go for a 10 or 20 or 30-minute walk, or just starting my morning, like I usually do like a 7 a.m. walk. If I'll do 7 to 8 a.m. or 7 to 7:45, like that gets my flow going and it makes the other things that could be stressful, I get through them faster or I get through them in a more smoother way. So I could even also prevent the stress from happening, right? So I think it's a very ironic aspect, which is going on the walks, especially when you don't feel like it, are likely to alleviate the overwhelm that you might feel if you weren't to do it. Does that make sense? I've also felt this. And again, I'm telling you, just try it the next time you're sitting down, even if you're at an office, just go outside, tell whoever you need to tell that you just need to get some movement. You need to get the flow in because you're not flowing and it's making you go 2 to 3 times slower. Who wouldn't want to hear that the employee would go way faster and more efficient with their role and their job if they just went on a 15 to 20-minute walk, right? So Another aspect to that too, as I kind of alluded earlier, is if this is more of like a workout, if you're doing a 1 hour walk in the morning, throw in a friend, say to a friend, hey, let's do a 7 a.m. walk together tomorrow. That way you can get movement, you get light, you get time with your friend, you get connection, right? And it just adds to your overall health, the mental health, the physical health. And of course, what is that likely going to lead to? A reduction in your stress and overwhelm. It just is like a nice ease into your day. And this is what I typically do if I can't make it to a yoga class or I can't do stretching, just a long walk, especially even in cold winter. It does feel good. I'm obviously not going to walk out there for an hour maybe, but I bundle up and I just accept that it's the same as a cold plunge and I go walking for like 30 minutes. It feels so good. I highly recommend it. It's something I've been doing for sure since I graduated college. That one's like the most consistent of all of them. And the last habit and tip I would say that is so helpful in reducing your stress or overwhelm and coming back to your core is indulging in a childhood activity. That could be anything. Maybe it's painting, a music instrument, pottery, reading more. Whatever that is, you and I both know there is an activity that you did as a child that just made you feel so yourself. And I'm going to always reiterate this. Do not forget about that. No matter how much of an adult life you have, no matter your responsibilities, if you don't pour into yourself, this is especially for motherhood out there too. I'm not a mom, of course, but I have heard this so many times. If you are trying to pour from a near empty cup, what do you think your child is going to get? Right? This is speaking to moms out there or future mothers, or future motherhood thinking, right? You have to take care of yourself and you have to figure out what that is or what those things are that help you feel most yourself. I know with certainty for me that indulging in childhood activities, the things that lit me up as a 10-year-old, helps me feel like the most authentic Emily. And so for me specifically, it's just to give you personal examples so that helps give you some ideas. I've been skating since I was 5 years old. I've been playing tennis since I was like 7 or 8 years old. So those two sports are very big childhood elements, but also playing the piano and just singing or what else? The other day I thought about just going on ClassPass and finding a ballet class to do, like just like an adult ballet class, right? Small things. And it doesn't have to be something that you end up doing on a weekly basis, but again, I'm giving you ideas that will help you get outside of yourself in very different ways. What else? I've been trying to add more, pottery is something I naturally just really love. I did a class in high school. I haven't done painting in a while. That wasn't like my crazy childhood talent or skill or activity, but I think it would be fun in the sense that it would bring me back to an inner child. I do love to bake, and so one way I could indulge in that is find a recipe and bake at home. I could do it with a friend. I could also go to a baking class, right? So there's so many different ways to indulge in that childhood activity. There's not just one way to do it, right? For me, I could play tennis against the wall. I could go to a tennis clinic. I could play in a tournament. I could find a hitting partner to play with. Again, so many different ways. And I'm sharing this with passion because I know that one of the best ways we can get closer to what feels like a really deeply fulfilling life is actually just feeling good mentally and physically. And the only way we can feel that way is when we actually intentionally take care of ourselves. And so these are the things that I have been a practitioner of for the past 5+ years. And so I'm not just rambling a bunch of BS. I am sharing this from personal experience. And this came to mind because someone asked me recently, how do I manage this high discipline, high performance mentality and not seem to burn out? And I would say, in all fairness, it's probably because I prioritize this more than the revenue, than the business, than, success. And I really do. It's why I knew at one point I considered going to law school. I really wanted to go to Georgetown Law. And then I paused and I remember thinking to myself, you'd be a fabulous lawyer, but you would suck so bad at sticking to a structure that requires you to put your health at risk and your freedom, your autonomy at risk. Like you're just not gonna you're just you can't, like that's just not you. And I'll admit that, there are some entrepreneurs that probably say like, you spend too much time with friends during the week. And it could be true, but I also think that my approach is more for the long haul, not for the over the next 5 years, how do I get to that success point quicker? But again, to each their own. And I value everything. I value being as successful and fulfilled as to whatever extent I can in my career and in my dreams. And I also value doing all of that while feeling good and not sinking too deep where it takes longer to bring myself back up in the future. So it's just really long-term thinking and preventative thinking. I hope this episode was helpful and that this gave you some ideas to apply for this week and for the months to come. And as we start to think about, of course, the new year is coming, but let's not think about the new year. Let's think about what kind of life do I want to live? And am I embodying that right now? Am I taking care of myself? And I hope there's something in here that gave you a little spark or a nudge towards that. And if this episode was helpful, I think you should share this with a friend. Sharing a helpful episode with a friend is also helping another person and someone you love and respect to get towards their own fulfilling life. For everything else, you can keep up with the podcast on Instagram at What Fulfills You. We also have a TikTok. I do have a TikTok. It's also just called What Fulfills You if you want to check that out. The YouTube channel where you can watch guest episodes. That's also simply What Fulfills You. You can find all of the links in the show notes. And if you are curious about the journal or card game, you can enjoy 10% off with the code WhatFulfillsYou10. The card game is very personal growth oriented. And I know many of you guys also use it for journaling prompts. So you can pair that with your sleek and chic journal. Everything again is at whatfulfillsyou.com. Thanks again for tuning in. I would chat with you all in the next episode.